Chapter 1, The Routine. My name is Leah. I'm 25, a photographer by profession, an observer by nature. For the past 5 years, I've been in a relationship that everyone would call steady, safe, and predictable. Alex. Gentle, caring, reliable. The kind of boyfriend who remembers your favorite coffee and leaves little notes on the mirror. But beneath the surface of that routine, I felt something slipping away. A quiet hunger, a restlessness I couldn't name. Every morning, I woke up in our small apartment, sunlight filtering through dusty curtains, and wondered if this was all life had to offer. We'd have breakfast, exchange polite small talk about our days, and I'd take my camera to work, trying to capture the beauty that seemed to be slipping through my fingers. Then, everything changed the day I was assigned to photograph a hospital ward, a project to capture moments of human strength and vulnerability. That's where I met Dmitri, tall, intense, with eyes that seemed to look right through me. He wasn't like anyone I'd ever met before. There was a magnetism in his presence, dangerous, thrilling. From the first moment, I felt a spark I didn't know I was missing. But I was taken, or so I thought. Chapter 2, Shadows and Sparks. It started with coincidence, Dmitri passing by as I packed up my camera. He asked if I wanted to grab a coffee, just coffee. But the way he looked at me said otherwise. I said yes before my mind had time to argue. We walked to a quiet cafe near the hospital, one of those old places with scratched wooden tables and antique chandeliers that never quite lit up properly. I told myself it was innocent, two adults talking about art and medicine and why neither of us had ever really learned to rest. He asked me questions no one had asked in years, about my work, my passion, my regrets. Why photography, he asked. I shrugged, because sometimes words aren't enough. He nodded, like he understood something even I hadn't said. I found myself laughing more than I had in months. My cheeks burned, not from shame, but from the warmth of being seen. When we said goodbye, he didn't try to touch me. He just smiled. The kind of smile that lingers long after someone is gone. I didn't tell Alex, not that night, not the next. But the guilt nestled under my skin like a bruise. I started noticing things. How I flinched when Alex touched me. How our conversations always circled back to groceries and bills and next month's dentist appointment. He was still kind, still mine. But I wasn't sure if I was still his. Weeks passed. Dmitri and I began texting, short messages at first, then longer, then deeper. I found myself checking my phone before bed, hiding the screen, smiling into the pillow. The worst part? I didn't want to stop. One Friday evening, after a late shoot near the hospital, he offered me a ride. "I'm not trying anything," he said, his hand casually on the wheel. "Just tired of seeing you wait for cabs." I got in. We didn't speak much during the drive, but the silence between us felt full, like it had a shape, a weight. At a red light, he turned to me. "I want to see you again," he said. "You already do," I whispered. He stared at me, unreadable. "No, Leah, I mean, really see you." That was the moment I realized I'd already crossed the line. My heart beat wildly, as if warning me or begging me forward. I didn't know which. That night, I sat beside Alex on the couch while we watched a movie I couldn't follow. He leaned his head on my shoulder. I kissed his forehead, and I cried quietly into his hair. Chapter 3, The Kiss That Burned. It happened on a Wednesday. I had just finished photographing a children's ward. Smiles forced through pain, tiny hands gripping stuffed animals like lifelines. I should have gone home. I should have gone to Alex. But instead, I found myself outside Dmitri's office, my heart pounding so loud I swore he could hear it through the door. He looked up when I knocked, his dark eyes narrowing with surprise, then softening into something else entirely. "Leah," he said, like my name was a prayer he didn't deserve to say out loud. "I can't stay long," I said, though I didn't move. "I don't care if you stay for 1 minute or 10 hours, he replied, standing slowly. "You came—" I didn't speak. I didn't have to. He stepped closer, slowly, like I was something fragile, or dangerous. His hand brushed my cheek. My breath caught. "This is wrong," I whispered. "I know," he said, but his thumb was already tracing my bottom lip. "But does it feel wrong?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The kiss was slow at first, hesitant, but then it exploded. Fire meeting gasoline. His hand slid into my hair. Mine gripped his shoulders like I was falling. Maybe I was. We didn't speak as his mouth moved down my neck, as he backed me into the wall and kissed me like a man starved. Every inch of me lit up, awakened, terrified. I wanted to stop. I didn't. I let him touch me like I'd never been touched before, like I was something to be worshipped, not just loved. His lips were everywhere. My moans were shameful and real. He never asked me to stay. I never asked if I should go. By the time I left his office, I was shaking, not from fear, but from how alive I suddenly felt. I rode home in silence, the city lights blurring through the window. Alex was already asleep. I undressed in the dark, crawled into bed beside him, and lay still. His arm moved in his sleep, draping over my waist. A comfort, a chain, and in that quiet moment, wrapped in his familiar warmth, I realized I had set something into motion I could never undo. Chapter 4. Cracks beneath the skin. I tried to pretend it never happened. Tried to fold that night with Dmitri into a box in the back of my mind and lock it shut. But every time Alex kissed me, I flinched, not because I didn't care, but because his tenderness only made me feel guiltier. Guilt is a strange thing. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It clings to your thoughts in quiet hours and poisons the taste of your own happiness. Dmitri didn't text for 3 days. I told myself I was relieved, but when his name finally lit up my screen, "Can I see you?" I didn't hesitate. We met at a bookstore, like we were playing pretend, like we could wrap this in the safety of poetry and first editions. He handed me a copy of Neruda's The Captain's Verses. There was a sticky note inside, pressed between the pages, "I want you, and I hate wanting you like this." I should have walked away. Instead, I kissed him behind a wall of mystery novels, fast, needy, like punishment. He tasted like coffee and regret. Back home, Alex was preparing dinner. He looked up and smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling the way they always did. "You smell like old books," he said playfully, wrapping his arms around me, and I wanted to scream. I began to pull away little by little. No more weekend plans, no more deep conversations. I gave him soft affection in place of real intimacy. He noticed, of course. Alex was never stupid, only trusting, too trusting. "You've been different," he said one night, tracing his finger down my spine as we lay in bed. "Is it work or is it something else?" I couldn't answer. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, hoping silence would erase the truth. But silence is loud when love begins to die. I met Dmitri more often, in hidden places, in empty corridors, in his car during rainy afternoons when I had no excuse to be anywhere but home. We didn't just touch, we talked about death, about art, about how lonely it was to be loved for who you were but not for who you were becoming. "I think you're waking up," he said once, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "And waking up always hurts." He kissed my knuckles like I was something sacred, but sacred things can be broken too. One night, while editing photos in the kitchen, I left my phone unlocked. Alex walked in, smiling, carrying 2 cups of tea. He placed one beside me, leaned over to kiss my cheek, and saw the message on my screen, "Dmitri, I still feel your breath on my chest." Time stopped. I watched his face change, like a slow eclipse swallowing the sun. "Who's Dmitri?" he asked, voice tight. I tried to lie. I really did. But something in me gave up. "My mistake," I whispered, eyes flooding. "My terrible mistake." He said nothing, just turned and walked out the front door. The tea sat untouched beside me, growing cold. Like everything else. Chapter 5. The Weight of Silence. Alex didn't come home that night, or the one after. I texted, I called, nothing. The space he left behind was bigger than just the apartment. It echoed in my chest, where love had once lived like a steady drum. Now it was silence, shame, and a fear I didn't know how to name. I found his hoodie on the back of the chair. I clutched it like it could explain anything, like fabric could absolve me of betrayal. I cried in the kitchen, the same one where I'd laughed with him a week ago. My tears tasted like truth, bitter and overdue. On the third day he called. "I'll come by for my things," he said. His voice was cold, not angry, worse, detached. "Alex, please, can we just talk? There's nothing left to say, Leah. You said it all. With him." He hung up. The door closed on 6 years of love without a bang, just the dull thud of reality. Dmitri called that night. I didn't answer. I couldn't bear to hear the voice that had once undone me with a whisper. I hated him. I hated myself more, but I still went to see him. His apartment was dim, like always. Jazz played low on the speaker. He opened the door with a frown. "I heard," he said. I collapsed into his arms before I could even think. He held me like he was trying to keep my pieces together. "I didn't want this," I whispered into his chest. "Yes, you did," he said softly. "You just didn't know how much it would cost." We didn't sleep together that night. He made me tea. We sat on the couch. I stared at the wall. He reached for my hand. "Stay with me." And I did, not because I was in love, because I had nowhere else to go. Days passed. People at the hospital still smiled at me like nothing had changed. Only Dmitri looked at me like he could see through the cracks. But something was off with him lately. A fatigue he couldn't hide, a heaviness in his gaze. "You look pale," I said one morning. "I've been tired," he replied, brushing it off. "Long shifts." But something didn't feel right. I watched him disappear into himself in quiet moments. Fingers trembling, eyes shadowed. The worry began as a whisper, then grew louder. One evening, I found a letter in his drawer. Folded, worn, specialist appointment, oncology. My chest tightened. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just sat on the edge of his bed and looked older than I'd ever seen him. "It's back," he said quietly. "What's back?" My voice trembled. He took a breath. "Lymphoma. I beat it once. I guess it was just waiting." Silence swallowed the room. "How long have you known?" "Since before I kissed you." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. "All this time, you never said anything?" "I didn't want to be your tragedy," he said, "but I couldn't help needing you anyway." That night, I sat beside him until dawn. I held his hand and stared at the man I had destroyed and the one I might lose. I was 25, and the weight of every choice I'd made was suddenly too heavy for my skin, and I hadn't even reached the end yet. Chapter 6. Fever Dreams. Dmitri started chemo a week later. I went with him to the hospital. The same halls where we first flirted now felt suffocating, their brightness too cruel, too sterile for what was happening inside him. He joked, "At first, now you really have an excuse to bring me soup and feel sorry for me," he said, trying to smile as the nurse hooked him up to the fourth. But the jokes didn't last long. His hands began to tremble more. He slept during the days. At night, he stared at the ceiling, and I knew he was bargaining with something bigger than both of us. I tried to take care of him. I made smoothies, bought books he never opened, stroked his back when he vomited up everything he tried to keep down. But I couldn't escape the guilt. The truth was, I had left a man who loved me for a man who was dying. Some nights I'd wake drenched in sweat, gasping from dreams where both of them stood at opposite ends of a burning bridge, and I was the one holding the match. Alex hadn't called. Not once, but I saw him once, accidentally, or maybe fatefully, in a bookstore we used to love. He looked thinner, pale in the fluorescent lighting. There was a book in his hands. When he noticed me, his eyes froze. Not angry, not soft, just distant. "Hi," I whispered. He nodded, said nothing. "I didn't mean for everything to happen like that, but it did," he said, "and you meant enough of it to let it." I reached for his arm, but he pulled back. You loved him more? The question landed like a knife. I don't know, I said honestly. I loved you differently. I still do. He laughed once, bitter and hollow. Then why am I the one you left bleeding? Before I could answer, he turned and walked away. I stood there, in the aisle between fiction and memoir, and felt like both. Dmitri's health declined fast. His hair thinned, his skin yellowed. I held his hand when the oncologist said the words, "No one wants to hear. There's not much more we can do." Dmitri didn't cry. I did. When we got home, he sat on the couch and looked at me with a kind of peaceful resignation. You should go, he said. What? You shouldn't have to watch me disappear. I'm not leaving you. He smiled. But I am leaving you. That's the truth, Leah. You just haven't accepted it yet. I couldn't breathe. Don't do this. I'd rather you remember me in motion. Not like this. We argued. I yelled. He stayed calm, and then I broke. I slid to the floor, my hands on his knees, and sobbed into the fabric of his pants like a child. I don't want to lose you. You already did, darling. You just loved me too late. He died 6 weeks later. I held his hand through the night. His last words were, "You were worth every stolen breath." And just like that, he was gone. Not with a scream, not with drama, just silence. And then cold. The funeral was small. His mother hugged me. His friends nodded with that kind of solemn reverence that means they don't know what to say but think they should. I went home alone. I stood in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror for hours. I didn't recognize the woman who stared back. Grief had changed her. So had love, and guilt, and lust, and choices. I picked up my camera for the first time in months and took a picture of myself. No makeup, no smile, just raw red-rimmed truth. I called the photo, The Cost of Almost. Chapter 7, The Mirror and the Sea. Grief is not a straight line. It's a spiral staircase that drops you into memories when you least expect it. A month after Dmitri's funeral, I traveled to the coast alone. A tiny house near the cliffs, the kind with salt-streaked windows and a bed that smelled of old books. I brought my camera, not for work, just for something to hold. Every morning I walked the shoreline. I took photos of driftwood, fog, the silhouettes of birds in the morning sky. But mostly, I took pictures of shadows. Mine. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post online. It was like pressing pause on the world so I could listen to the static of my own heart. One afternoon, I found a letter in my bag, folded into a worn envelope. Dmitri's handwriting. Leah, if you're reading this, then I'm no longer beside you. But I hope I'm still in your chest, quietly reminding you that the fire we had was real, that it mattered. Don't freeze yourself in this grief. Don't turn me into a shrine. Love again. Laugh without guilt. Take photographs of beauty even when the world looks gray. And forgive yourself. Because I already did. Always yours, somewhere, D. I sat on the floor, sand on my feet, tears running down my cheeks, and I whispered, I'm sorry to the sea until the sun disappeared. Epilogue. 2 years later, I had an exhibition. I called it Thresholds. Photos of pain, of healing, of shadows stepping into light. People came, they cried, they stared. Some wrote me letters after. Alex came too. He stood silently before a black and white shot of a single empty chair in a hospital corridor. When I walked over, he said, You found a way to make loss beautiful. I didn't say anything, just took his hand. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't closure. It was two people who had burned and survived the fire, standing in the smoke. And me, Leah, somewhere between ruin and rebirth, finally whole in my solitude. I still think of Dmitri. Some nights, I dream of his laugh, his hands, his fearless love. But I don't dream in guilt anymore. Now I dream in color. And every time I press the shutter, I know I am alive, and I am enough.